The blade stopped an inch from Prince Adrien's throat. The pre-dawn darkness of the castle's forgotten archives died. He stared into eyes that should have held fear but blazed with something far more dangerous. The servant girl who cleaned these dusty chambers held a letter opener with the steady hand of someone who knew exactly how to use it. "You read my correspondence?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrien's pulse hammered against his neck where the cold metal pressed. He had followed her here after noticing the torn seal on his private letter, expecting to find a common thief. Instead, he discovered Lara standing over his desk, tears streaming down her face as she held a document that could destroy kingdoms. That letter contained state secrets, he managed, fighting the urge to disarm her. Something in her posture told him she would cut his throat before he could move. "It contains my brother's death warrant." Her hand trembled now, not with fear, but with barely contained rage. "You signed it 3 days ago." The archive room felt smaller suddenly, suffocating. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of moonlight that fell between them. Adrien could smell the leather bindings of ancient books mixed with something else. Lavender, her scent. "Your brother was a traitor," he said carefully. "He sold information to our enemies. My brother was trying to buy medicine for our dying mother." The blade pressed closer. "But you wouldn't know about that, would you, Your Highness? You've never had to choose between loyalty and love." Adrien studied her face in the dim light. 3 months she had worked in his castle, invisible as air, emptying chamber pots and scrubbing floors. He had never truly looked at her before tonight. Now he saw the intelligence burning behind her grief, the way she held her body like a weapon despite her simple brown dress. "Lower the blade, Lara. So you do know my name." She laughed bitterly. "I wondered if princes bothered learning the names of people they condemned to death. Your brother made his choice, and I'm making mine." But she didn't move the letter opener. "Tell me something, Prince Adrien. What would you do if someone threatened to execute the only family you had left?" The question hung between them, like smoke. Adrien thought of his younger brother Tristan, currently away on diplomatic missions, and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He would burn the world down first. "You're not going to kill me," he said finally. "How can you be certain?" "Because if you wanted me dead, I would be already." He took a careful step back, and she let him. "You want something else?" Lara lowered the blade slowly, but kept it ready. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything. I want you to know that your decisions have consequences beyond your gilded throne room. And then what? You disappear into the night, flee the kingdom. Then I decide if a prince's life is worth more than a servant's brother." Adrien felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he didn't want to name. She wasn't pleading or begging. She was negotiating from a position of strength, despite having nothing but a letter opener and righteous fury. "You have until dawn," she said, backing toward the archive's hidden exit he hadn't known existed. "Save my brother, or discover what a servant with nothing left to lose can accomplish." She vanished into the darkness, leaving only the scent of lavender and the promise of consequences he had never considered. Adrien stood alone among the ancient books, touching his throat where her blade had rested. For the first time in his privileged life, someone had made him feel genuinely afraid, not of death, but of the mirror she had held up to his soul. Outside, dawn was still hours away. Adrien found himself in the castle dungeons as the first rays of sunlight pierced the barred windows. The execution was scheduled for noon. Marcus, Lara's brother, sat chained to the wall in a cell that reeked of mold and human despair. He was younger than Adrien had expected, perhaps 19, with the same dark hair and defiant eyes as his sister. But where Lara burned with controlled fury, Marcus radiated broken resignation. "Have you come to gloat, Your Highness?" Marcus asked without looking up. Adrien studied the prisoner through the iron bars. "Tell me about the medicine." Marcus's head snapped up, confusion flickering across his gaunt features. "What? Your sister says you sold state secrets to buy medicine for your mother. I want to hear it from you." A harsh laugh escaped Marcus's throat. "Why? Will it change anything? Will the great Prince Adrien suddenly develop a conscience?" Answer the question. Marcus was quiet for so long that Adrien thought he wouldn't speak. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he began. She was burning with fever for weeks. The court physicians wouldn't see a servant, and the local healers wanted gold we didn't have. I found a merchant who claimed to have remedies from the Eastern Kingdoms, but his price was information about troop movements, so you stole from my war council. I copied one document. Marcus's voice cracked. One, about supply routes. I thought it was harmless enough. I didn't know they were planning an ambush. Adrien felt his jaw tighten. 12 soldiers had died in that ambush. Good men with families. The medicine arrived 3 days after she died. Markel laughed again, the sound hollow and broken. Turned out to be colored water and herbs worth less than copper coins. I traded 12 lives for nothing. The prince stood in the dim corridor, listening to the drip of water somewhere in the darkness. He had expected defiance, excuses, attempts at manipulation. Instead, he found genuine remorse and a grief so raw it made his chest ache. Your sister threatened to kill me last night. Marcus straightened, alarm replacing resignation. Lara, that's impossible. She wouldn't hurt anyone. She held a blade to my throat and demanded I spare your life. She what? Marcus struggled against his chains. That foolish girl. She'll get herself executed too. You have to stop her. You have to make her leave the kingdom before she does something else stupid. Adrien found himself staring at the prisoner. With new interest, even facing death, Marcus's first concern was protecting his sister. The same sister who was willing to risk everything to save him. Why should I spare you? Adrien asked. You're a traitor. You cost me good soldiers. I'm not asking you to spare me. Marcus met his eyes directly. I deserve to die for what? I did. But Lara doesn't deserve to lose her life trying to save mine. She's all I have left in this world, and apparently I'm all she has left. Don't let my mistakes destroy her too. The words hit Adrien like a physical blow. He thought of his own brother, of the lengths he would go to protect Tristan. He thought of Lara's tear-stained face as she read the execution order, of the way she had held that letter opener with the desperation of someone with nothing left to lose. The execution is in 4 hours, he said finally. I know. Marcus leaned back against the stone wall. Will you at least make sure she doesn't do anything foolish? Lock her in a room until it's over if you have to. She deserves a chance at life, even if I don't. Adrien turned to leave, then stopped. Marcus. Yes, Your Highness. Your mother. What was her name? The young man's composure cracked for just a moment. Alina. Her name was Alina. Adrien climbed the dungeon stairs. His mind raced through possibilities. He could commute the sentence to life imprisonment, could claim new evidence had come to light, could fabricate a dozen different justifications. But each option came with political consequences. The nobles who had lost men in that ambush would demand explanations. His father, the king, would question his judgment. His enemies would whisper that Prince Adrien had gone soft, that he could be manipulated by a pretty servant with tears in her eyes. By the time he reached his chambers, Adrien had made his decision. It was the practical choice, the politically sound choice, the choice a future king should make. So why did his hands shake as he prepared to sign the final execution order? A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Enter. Lara stepped into his chambers, no longer the desperate woman from the archives. She wore a clean servant's dress and had braided her hair neatly, but her eyes still held that dangerous fire. Have you made your choice, Your Highness? Adrien set down his quill and studied her face. In the daylight streaming through his windows, she was strikingly beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with paint or jewelry. Her beauty came from intelligence and courage, and the kind of strength that could only be forged in hardship. You spoke with your brother? Her mask slipped for just a moment, and he asked me to protect you from your own foolishness? I don't need protection. No, Adrien said quietly. I'm beginning to think you don't. He stood and walked to his window, looking out at the courtyard where a scaffold was being erected. In a few hours, a crowd would gather to watch a young man die for his crimes. Justice would be served. Order would be maintained. Tell me something, Lara. If I spare your brother's life, What guarantee do I have that you won't use what you learned against me? That letter contained more than just his death warrant. She joined him at the window, close enough that he could smell lavender again. You have my word. The word of a servant who threatened to kill me 12 hours ago. The word of a woman who has nothing left but her honor. Adrien turned to face her, and the intensity in her gaze made his breath catch. This close, he could see gold flecks in her brown eyes, could count the freckles across her nose. She was real in a way that courtly ladies with their powdered faces and political marriages never seemed to be. Your honor, he repeated. Yes. Whatever else you think of me, your highness, know that I keep my promises. Outside, the castle bell began to toll the noon hour. The execution was postponed. Adrien announced it to the gathered crowd with the composed authority of a future king, citing new evidence that requires investigation. The disappointed murmurs of nobles who had come expecting blood turned to whispered speculation about Prince Adrien's judgment. His father, King Aldrich, summoned him immediately. You've made enemies today, the king said from his throne, his weathered face showing the strain of 40 years of rule. Lord Hastings lost his son in that ambush. He wanted to see the traitor's head on a spike. The prisoner will still face justice, father. Simply need more time to ensure we have the full truth. King Aldrich studied his heir with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain servant girl, would it? My spies tell me she was seen entering your chambers this morning. Adrien kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. I questioned all the castle staff who might have had contact with the prisoner. She cleaned his cell, indeed. The king's tone suggested he wasn't fooled. Son, I've ruled this kingdom for 4 decades. I know what it looks like when a man makes decisions with his heart instead of his head. It rarely ends well. My decision was based on political wisdom, nothing more. And you'll have no difficulty proceeding with the execution tomorrow. I've already announced the new date. The words hit Adrien like a physical blow, but he couldn't let it show. Of course, father. As he left the throne room, Adrien's mind raced. He had bought one day, nothing more. And now every eye in the castle would be watching him, waiting, to see if the crown prince would crack under pressure. He found Lara in the servants' quarters that evening, sitting alone in the common room, while other staff gave her suspicious glances. Word had spread that she was somehow connected to the prisoner, making her a pariah among people who couldn't afford to associate with treason. Walk with me, he said quietly. She followed him through corridors lit by flickering torches, neither speaking until they reached the castle's highest tower. The night air was cool against their faces as they stepped onto the battlements overlooking the kingdom. You didn't save him, Lara said finally. I bought us time, one day. My sources tell me the execution is scheduled for tomorrow at dawn. This time, no crowds, no spectacle. Just a quick death before anyone can object. Adrien stared out at the lights scattered across the valley below, each one representing families, lives, responsibilities he would inherit. Your sources? Servants. Hear everything, your highness. We're invisible to nobles, which makes us excellent spies. He turned to study her profile in the moonlight. Is that what you are? A spy? I'm whatever I need to be to protect what matters to me. The honesty in her voice made something twist in his chest. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without calculation, without weighing every word for political advantage? What would you do, he asked suddenly, if you were in my position? Lara looked at him with surprise. You're asking for my advice? I'm asking what you would choose. If you had to balance one life against the stability of a kingdom. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. I would ask myself if the kingdom I was protecting was worth preserving. If justice means watching desperate people die for desperate choices, while those with power never face consequences for theirs, then maybe the system itself is the problem. You're talking about revolution. I'm talking about mercy. About recognizing that the people you rule are human beings with families and fears and impossible choices. Marcus made a terrible mistake, but he made it out of love. How many nobles have made worse choices out of greed or ambition and never faced a moment's consequence? Adrien thought of the corruption he'd witnessed in court. The ways wealthy merchants bought favorable treatment, the nobles who sent other men's sons to die in wars while their own stayed safely at home. "You think I'm weak?" he said. "I think you're conflicted. There's a difference. My father thinks I'm making decisions with my heart instead of my head." Lara stepped closer, and he could see the way moonlight caught the gold in her eyes. Maybe. That's not always a bad thing. Air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Adrien found himself studying the curve of her lips, remembering the fierce determination she'd shown in the archives. She was unlike anyone he'd ever encountered, dangerous and beautiful and utterly without pretense. "If I spare your brother," he said quietly, "what happens to us? So don't pretend you don't feel it. It's pull between us. I've been thinking about you since the moment you held that blade to my throat." Color rose in her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "You're a prince. I'm a servant. There is no us. There could be, is what? Your secret mistress. Hidden away in some tower while you marry a princess for political alliance?" The words stung because they were true. That was exactly the kind of arrangement nobles made, keeping love and duty in separate chambers of their hearts. "I don't know," he admitted. "I only know that when I look at you, I feel more alive than I have in years. You challenge me. You make me question everything I thought I knew about myself." Lara reached out as if to touch his face, then caught herself. Adrien, the way she said his name, without title or ceremony, made his breath catch. "My brother dies tomorrow," she continued. "After that, I'll disappear from your life. Marry your princess and rule your kingdom, and forget about the servant girl who dared to threaten you. I could never forget you. You'll have to." Before he could respond, she was walking away, leaving him alone on the battlements with the weight of impossible choices pressing down on his shoulders. Below in the courtyard, torches were being lit around a freshly built scaffold. Dawn was 6 hours away. Adrien didn't sleep. Instead, he spent the night in his study, surrounded by law books and royal precedents, searching for any legitimate way to spare Marcus without triggering a political crisis. Every option led to the same conclusion. He could save one life, but it would cost him his crown. As the first pale light of dawn crept through his windows, a commotion erupted in the courtyard below. Shouts, running footsteps, the clatter of armor. Adrien rushed to his window and felt his blood turn to ice. The scaffold was on fire. Bright orange flames licked at the wooden platform while guards ran with buckets of water, trying to contain the blaze. In the chaos, he spotted a familiar figure slipping through the shadows near the dungeons. Adrien ran from his chambers, taking stairs 3 at a time as he raced toward the dungeons. He arrived to find the outer door standing open. The guards who should have been posted there, nowhere to be seen. Inside, Marcus's cell was empty, his chains cut through with professional precision. "Clever girl," said a voice behind him. Adrien spun to find his brother Tristan leaning against the stone wall, having returned early from his diplomatic mission. Younger by 3 years, Tristan had always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of any trouble. "Back early. Lucky thing, too. I arrived just in time to see your servant friend scaling the castle walls with a sword she definitely shouldn't know how to use. Tell me, brother, when did you start training the cleaning staff in combat?" Adrien's mind raced. "You saw her escape?" "I saw her rescue someone she loves. Consequences be damned." Reminded me of something you might do, actually. Remember when we were children and you climbed the bell tower to save that injured hawk? Father was furious, but you said some things were worth the risk. This is different. She's committed treason now, helping a prisoner escape, destroying royal property, assaulting guards. Did she assault the guards? Because I happen to know those particular men are prone to heavy drinking and might have simply fallen asleep at their posts. As for the fire, well, accidents happen. Dry wood, careless torch placement, very tragic. Adrien stared at his brother. "You helped her?" Tristan's grin was unrepentant. "I provided a distraction. She did the rest herself." "Honestly, Adrien, where did you find this woman? She moves like a shadow and thinks 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She'd make an excellent spy. She was a servant. She was a woman protecting. Her family, and you, dear brother, are completely besotted with her. There was no point denying it. Father will have my head when he discovers what happened. Only if he discovers it. The official story is that the prisoner overpowered his guards during their drunken stupor and escaped in the confusion of the fire. Tragic, but these things happen. And the guards will support this story. They will if they don't want to. Face execution themselves for dereliction of duty. Adrien felt a mixture of relief and terror. Lara was free. Marcus was alive, but now they were both fugitives. If they were captured, nothing could save them. "She'll never be able to return," he said quietly. "Is that what's bothering you? Or are you upset that she didn't ask for your help?" The question hit closer to home than Adrien cared to admit. He had spent the night trying to find a way to save Marcus through official channels, but Lara had simply acted. The situation, formed a plan, and executed it flawlessly while he was still buried in law books. "She doesn't trust me," he realized. "Can you blame her? You had her brother scheduled for execution twice. From her perspective, you're the enemy. If I had simply released Marcus, it would have raised questions. There would have been investigations, trials, people looking into her background. This way, she's just a servant who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Have you considered telling her that?" Before Adrien could respond, a horn sounded from the castle walls. 3 long blasts, the signal for escaped prisoners. Within minutes, the courtyard. It would be full of soldiers preparing for a manhunt. "They won't get far on foot," Adrien said. Tristan pulled a small roll of parchment from his coat. "They're not on foot. And this message suggests they won't be returning to this kingdom anytime soon." Adrien unrolled the paper with trembling hands. The handwriting was elegant despite being hastily written. "Your Highness, by the time you read this, my brother and I will be beyond your reach. I want you to know that I understand the impossible position you were in. I bear you no ill will for the choices you felt forced to make. You are a good man trapped in a system that demands terrible things from good people. I also want you to know that what passed between us on the battlements was real, at least for me. In another life, in another world, perhaps we could have found a way to bridge the gap between prince and commoner. But in this world, love is a luxury neither of us can afford. Thank you for showing me that there are nobles who struggle with their consciences. It gives me hope that the kingdom might someday become a place where justice and mercy can coexist. Now, do not look for us. We are dead to this world now, which means we are finally free to live." Adrien read the letter twice. Then a third time, each word cutting deeper than the last. She was thanking him for his conscience while running from his justice. She was speaking of love while disappearing from his life forever. "The horses are from my personal stable," Tristan said quietly. "Fast, strong, and trained for long distances. I also provided them with gold enough to start a new life somewhere far from here. You've committed treason. I've helped love triumph over politics. History will judge which of us made the right choice." The horn sounded again more urgently. This time, soon, search parties would fan out across the kingdom, but Adrien already knew they would find nothing. Lara had planned this escape with the same precision she had used to infiltrate his private study. By now, she and Marcus were already miles away, riding toward a freedom that would cost them everything they had ever known. In his hands, her letter felt like both a farewell and a challenge. She had chosen love over safety, action over deliberation, freedom over security. Everything. He had been too afraid to choose himself. For the first time in his life, Prince Adrien wondered if the crown was worth the price of his soul. 3 months later, Adrien stood in the same archives where Lara had first held a blade to his throat. The room had been cleaned and reorganized, but he could still smell lavender in the dusty air. Or perhaps that was just his imagination, holding onto memories that grew more precious with each passing day. The kingdom had moved on. The escaped prisoners were presumed dead, lost to bandits or wild animals in the vast forests beyond the border. The nobles who had demanded blood found new causes for outrage. Life in the castle resumed its familiar rhythms of politics and protocol. But Adrien had changed. He found himself questioning every decision, every law, every tradition that put power before people. During court sessions, he listened more carefully to petitions from common folk. He visited the dungeons regularly, ensuring prisoners were treated humanely. He quietly commuted 3 death sentences, citing technicalities and procedural errors that his legal advisors didn't question too closely. His father noticed the changes but attributed them to growing maturity. The nobles whispered that Prince Adrien was becoming more serious about his future responsibilities. None of them suspected that their future king was being haunted by the memory of a servant girl who had shown him the difference between justice and vengeance. The letter announcing his arranged marriage to Princess Isabella of the neighboring kingdom arrived on a Tuesday morning. She was beautiful in her portrait, politically advantageous, and completely vapid based on her carefully composed correspondence about horses and weather. The wedding was scheduled for the following spring. Adrien accepted the arrangement with the same resignation he felt about all his royal duties. But something inside him had broken. The part of him that had once dreamed of more than duty and obligation had died the night Lara disappeared. That evening, as he walked the battlements where they had shared their last conversation, Tristan joined him with a knowing look, brooding. Again, brother, contemplating the responsibilities of kingship. Is that what we're calling it? 'Cause from where I'm standing, it looks like you're mourning a lost love while preparing to marry someone you've never met. Adrien didn't bother denying it. Tristan had always been able to read him too easily. She made her choice, Adrien said finally. She chose freedom over everything else. I have to respect that, do you? Or do you have other options? You're too afraid to consider? Before Adrien could ask what he meant, Tristan produced another letter from his coat. This one was sealed with unfamiliar wax, and the handwriting on the outside was carefully disguised. But Adrien's heart began to race as soon as he saw it. This arrived through very unofficial channels, Tristan said. Apparently there are networks of people who specialize in getting messages to places they're not supposed to go. Adrien broke the seal with shaking hands. Your Highness, I hope this letter finds you well, and that you will forgive the irregular manner of its delivery. Marcus and I have found sanctuary in a small village near the eastern mountains, where we work as healers and scribes. We are safe, healthy, and slowly learning what it means to build a life based on our own choices rather than the circumstances of our birth. I think of you often and wonder if you found peace with the decisions that duty demands. I hope you have, and I hope that somewhere in your heart you remember that there are different kinds of strength. Sometimes the greatest courage lies not in upholding the law, but in having the wisdom to know when the law itself is wrong. I cannot return to your world, but I wanted you to know that I carry the memory of your struggle with me. You showed me that even princes can question the systems they inherit, and that gives me hope for the future of all kingdoms. The village where we live sits in a valley between two mountain passes. Travelers stop here often, traders and scholars, and sometimes even nobles who prefer to remain anonymous. The inn is called the Silver Stag, and the innkeeper's daughter serves the finest honey wine in 3 kingdoms. Should you ever find yourself in need of refuge from the weight of crowns and expectations, you would be welcome here. I am no longer the desperate woman who threatened you in the darkness. I have learned to read and write, to prepare medicines, and settle disputes. I have discovered that freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of choice, in how we meet our obligations to others. I do not expect a response to this letter, nor do I expect ever to see you again. But I wanted you to know that somewhere in this world, 2 people live free because a prince chose to look the other way when justice and mercy came into conflict. That choice saved us, and it may have saved you as well. With gratitude and abiding affection, L. Postscript, Marcus sends his regards and his regrets. He has become a fine healer and serves his community with the same dedication he once showed to our family. He says that good men can rise from their mistakes if given the chance to do so. Adrien read the letter 3 times before looking up, to find Tristan watching him with a satisfied smile. The Silver Stag Inn, Tristan said casually. Lovely this time of year, I'm told. Perfect place for a prince to disappear for a few weeks before his wedding preparations begin in earnest. I can't just leave. There are responsibilities. Duties, there are always responsibilities. The question is whether you're brave enough to choose which ones matter most. Adrien stared out at the kingdom spreading below them, at the lights that represented thousands of lives he would someday be responsible for governing. Then he looked at the letter in his hands, at the promise of a different kind of life written. In careful script, Father would never forgive me. Father fell in love with a commoner before he met Mother. Did you know that? Her name was Sarah, and she was a baker's daughter. He still keeps her portrait hidden in his desk drawer. Adrien turned to stare at his brother. How do you know that? I know a lot of things, including the fact that the kingdom won't collapse. If you take a few weeks to clear your head before committing to a lifetime of political marriage. The letter seemed to burn in Adrien's hands as he considered possibilities he had never dared imagine. He could travel to the Silver Stag as a common merchant. He could see Lara again, speak with her, perhaps understand what she had built from the ashes of her old life. But could he return? Could he see her happiness and freedom and then come back to accept his golden cage? What if I can't come back? He asked quietly. Tristan's smile was sad but understanding. Then you'll finally know what it means to choose love over duty. And maybe that's a choice this kingdom needs its future king to understand. As dawn broke over the castle walls, Prince Adrien made his decision. He would go to the Silver Stag. Not as a prince seeking to reclaim what he had lost, but as a man trying to understand what kind of person he wanted to become. In his chambers, he packed simple clothes and what gold he could carry without drawing attention. He would take no guards, no royal banners, no symbols of the power that had defined him since birth. For the first time in his life, he would travel. As just Adrien, a man with choices to make and consequences to face, the Silver Stag waited in a valley between mountain passes, where a woman who had once threatened to kill him now served honey wine to strangers and built a life based on her own courage rather than the circumstances of her birth. Whether he would find love, redemption, or simply a clearer understanding of the man he was meant to become, Adrien couldn't say. But he knew that some journeys were worth taking, regardless of their destination, as he rode out of the castle gates. In the pre-dawn darkness, Adrien carried with him the memory of piercing eyes and the scent of lavender, the promise of freedom and the weight of choices yet unmade. Behind him, the crown waited. Ahead of him, the unknown beckoned with all its terrible and wonderful possibilities. For the first time in his life, Prince Adrien was truly free to choose his own path. The end.